The year was 2267, and Earth had been monitoring the skies for decades, waiting for a moment like this. The aliens, a powerful species known as the Vorkari, had conquered countless planets across the galaxy. Their ships were massive, their weapons more advanced than anything Earth had ever seen, yet they had never encountered humanity. Until now. In a secret military base hidden deep beneath Earth's surface, a team of scientists and engineers had been working tirelessly on a weapon that could change the future of mankind. They had spent years developing the Eclipse, a warship unlike anything the universe had ever seen. It was Earth's last hope, a ship capable of taking down the Vorkari fleet. But the world had no idea the aliens were coming. On the surface, Earth appeared unprepared. The Vorkari's fleet had already crossed the outer limits of the solar system and was heading straight for Earth's defenses. Their leader, Admiral Zoreth, was confident that this would be another easy conquest. His fleet was enormous, and their power was unmatched. The Vorkari had been victorious in every battle, their enemies barely putting up a fight. Zoreth surveyed his fleet from the bridge of his flagship, a ship as large as a city. His green skin gleamed in the dim light, and his sharp eyes narrowed as he focused on the small blue planet below. "Prepare to begin the invasion," he ordered. His voice was deep, filled with authority. "No one stands against the Vorkari." On Earth, however, something different was happening. The world's leaders had no idea how to defend their planet from an enemy of this magnitude. The global military forces had assembled, but their weapons were outdated compared to what the aliens had brought. Humanity's only hope lay in the Eclipse, the warship they had kept hidden away for years. Captain Elias Reed stood at the helm of the Eclipse, staring at the massive screens in front of him. His crew, an elite group of soldiers and scientists, had spent months training for this moment. They knew their ship could make the difference. Reed had always believed in humanity's ability to fight, to survive against impossible odds. Now, it was time to put that belief to the test. As the alien fleet grew closer, Reed spoke to his crew with a calm determination. "This is what we've trained for. We have one shot to stop them, and we'll make it count. Earth is counting on us." His crew nodded in agreement. They understood the gravity of the situation. There would be no second chances. High above the Earth, Zoreth's fleet moved closer, confident in their victory. He smiled, knowing that this planet would soon be part of the Vorkari Empire. Little did he know, the battle he was about to face would not be one he could win easily. For Earth's warship, the Eclipse, was ready to show the aliens just how far humanity had come. The stage was set for a battle that would change the galaxy forever. The Vorkari fleet loomed large above Earth, its ships casting shadows across the planet's surface. Admiral Zoreth looked out from his flagship, confident that this would be another easy conquest for his people. His fleet had defeated dozens of civilizations in the past, and Earth seemed no different. The alien ships, sleek and powerful, drifted toward Earth with a slow, steady rhythm. On the surface, Earth's military was in a state of high alert. Nations had united to prepare for the alien invasion, but their forces were no match for the Vorkari's advanced weaponry. Earth's leaders had placed their hopes in the Eclipse, but no one knew what it could do. They only knew that it was their last line of defense. Inside the Eclipse, Captain Elias Reed stood at the command center, scanning the monitors that displayed the incoming alien fleet. His mind raced, but he remained calm. He had spent years preparing for this day, and now it had arrived. His crew worked with quiet efficiency, ready for the battle ahead. "We can't waste any time," Reed said, his voice steady. "Once the Vorkari start their attack, it will be too late." His crew nodded in agreement. They had trained for every scenario, but nothing could truly prepare them for the might of the alien fleet. However, they also knew one thing: human ingenuity had always found a way. Meanwhile, Admiral Zoreth was still watching Earth from his flagship. He was certain that this mission would be a quick success. His fleet outnumbered Earth's defenses, and the Eclipse was still a mystery to him. He had heard rumors of a new human weapon, but they were only that, rumors. Zoreth's fleet had never lost a battle, and he didn't expect that to change now. "Begin the attack," Zoreth commanded. The Vorkari ships began to move into position, their weapons charged and ready. Zoreth's heart raced with excitement. He was about to lead his people to another glorious victory. But as the first wave of Vorkari ships approached Earth's atmosphere, something unexpected happened. A massive shape appeared in the distance, a ship that dwarfed anything Zoreth had ever seen. It was the Eclipse. Zoreth narrowed his eyes in disbelief. "What is that?" he muttered under his breath. The Eclipse slowly emerged from behind Earth's atmosphere, its surface gleaming like a dark star. It was unlike anything Zoreth had encountered in his entire career. The ship was massive, its weapons ready for action. Its design was sleek, but there was something about it that sent a chill down Zoreth's spine. The ship looked alive, as though it were part of the Earth itself. The first blast came without warning. A brilliant flash of energy shot from the Eclipse, striking one of the Vorkari ships with devastating force. The ship exploded in a massive fireball, scattering debris across the sky. Zoreth's eyes widened in shock. He had underestimated humanity. This was no ordinary weapon. "Prepare to counterattack," Zoreth ordered, but the Eclipse was already on the move. Reed had anticipated this, and with the first strike, Earth's warship had already proven its power. The alien fleet was about to face something they had never seen before, something they could not defeat easily. The battle had begun, and the Vorkari were not prepared for the storm that was coming their way. The sudden blast that tore through the alien fleet was a shockwave that rattled the skies. For a moment, Admiral Zoreth's flagship seemed to stand still in the vastness of space, the destruction of his fleet happening so quickly, so unexpectedly, that he couldn't process it. The Vorkari ships were too advanced, too strong. Nothing could destroy them so easily. Nothing except Earth's Eclipse. Captain Elias Reed stood tall at the bridge of the Eclipse, his eyes locked on the screen as the enemy fleet scattered in panic. His crew was silent, focused, knowing that the battle was only just beginning. The energy of the ship's first strike still crackled in the air, but Reed knew that it had sent a message. Earth was not to be underestimated. "Get ready for Phase 2, Reed said, his voice calm but filled with authority. "Prepare the next set of weapons." The crew moved quickly, adjusting controls and preparing the warship for the next onslaught. The Eclipse wasn't just a ship. It was a fortress, a weapon, a symbol of humanity's determination to defend their world. The ship's surface shimmered, reflecting the stars as it turned toward the alien fleet. The Vorkari were still reeling from the destruction. Zoreth's mind raced. He had assumed victory was certain. His fleet was larger, technologically superior. But the human warship was something else entirely. How could this be possible? "Regroup," Zoreth barked. "I want the fleet to focus on that ship. We cannot allow it to destroy us." As his fleet scrambled to form a defensive line, the Eclipse moved forward, its massive engines thrumming with power. Reed watched the screen closely, knowing the Vorkari would now realize they were up against something they had never expected. Humanity's most advanced weapon. Earth wasn't just fighting for survival. They were fighting for a place in the galaxy, and this warship was their weapon of choice. The Eclipse fired again. This time, the blast was concentrated into a concentrated beam of energy, cutting through two Vorkari ships in a single sweep. The ships exploded in a violent burst, their remains drifting aimlessly into space. The battle was escalating, and the alien fleet was falling apart piece by piece. On the bridge of his flagship, Zoreth gritted his teeth. "Get the fighters out. We need to engage them directly." The Vorkari launched their smaller ships, hoping to overwhelm the Eclipse with numbers. But Reed had anticipated this. With a sharp command, the Eclipse deployed its own fighters, sleek and fast, swooping through the battlefield with deadly precision. The human ships cut through the Vorkari fighters like knives through butter, turning the tide of the battle in an instant. Admiral Zorath watched as the tide of the battle turned against him. His fleet, which had once seemed unstoppable, was now being destroyed before his eyes. The Eclipse wasn't just a ship, it was a nightmare for the Valkyrie, a nightmare that they couldn't escape from. With every move, Reed's crew showed why humanity was not to be underestimated. They didn't have the technology of the Valkyrie, but they had something far more powerful: their will to fight. As the Eclipse moved forward, its weapons firing relentlessly, Reed knew this was their moment. The Valkyrie might be a powerful force, but Earth had something they could never have: human ingenuity, resilience, and the power to fight for their survival. The alien fleet was standing defenseless, and Earth's warship, the Eclipse, was just getting started. The Valkyrie fleet was in chaos. What had started as a confident march toward Earth had turned into a desperate scramble for survival. Admiral Zorath gripped the armrests of his command chair, his knuckles white as he watched the screen. His ships, some of the most powerful in the galaxy, were being torn apart by a single human warship. The Eclipse wasn't just a ship, it was a force of nature. Zorath's first command had been to regroup, but it seemed futile. The Eclipse was everywhere at once, its weapons firing in rapid succession, cutting through his fleet with precision. The alien ships, once a symbol of invincibility, now appeared clumsy and fragile in comparison. "Report," Zorath shouted, his voice rising in frustration. The Valkyrie officer at his side quickly spoke, trying to maintain his composure. "Admiral, our shields are failing. The human ship's energy blasts are too powerful. We've lost 2 more capital ships." Zorath slammed his fist against the console. This wasn't supposed to happen. "How is this possible?" he muttered, almost to himself. "What kind of technology are they using?" On the Eclipse, Captain Reed stood calmly at the helm, his eyes focused on the battle. His crew was working in perfect harmony, anticipating every move the Valkyrie made. Reed knew they couldn't afford to stop. Every moment counted, and the alien fleet was still dangerous despite their confusion. "We need to finish this," Reed said, his voice steady but filled with purpose. "Prepare for the next wave of fire." The crew moved quickly, launching more energy blasts, this time with greater intensity. The Eclipse's cannons lit up the dark expanse of space, firing in a rhythmic pulse, each shot hitting its mark. Another alien ship shattered into pieces, debris floating aimlessly in space. Admiral Zorath watched as one of his largest ships, a heavily armored cruiser, tried to retaliate. It fired a series of missiles, hoping to overwhelm the Eclipse. But before the missiles could even come close, the Eclipse fired a burst of energy so powerful that it disintegrated the incoming projectiles. "Impossible," Zorath hissed. "What kind of ship is this?" On the Eclipse, Reed didn't have time to answer. He was too focused on the fight. The Valkyrie were trying to regroup, but they were already on the back foot. As Reed gave the order, another barrage of energy shot toward the Valkyrie flagship, and this time it struck with a devastating force. The alien flagship, the heart of the Valkyrie fleet, began to crack under the pressure. The shields flickered and failed, and the ship groaned under the stress of Earth's weapons. Within moments, explosions began to erupt across the flagship's surface. Zorath felt a cold sweat form on his brow as he watched his flagship being destroyed. He had never seen a ship fight like this before, so relentless, so powerful. He was losing, and he knew it. His fleet was crumbling, and there was nothing he could do to stop it. The battle was turning in humanity's favor. Reed's strategy had worked. Earth's warship was unstoppable, and the Valkyrie fleet, once so sure of their victory, was falling apart piece by piece. Zorath's heart sank as he realized the truth. This battle, this war, would be the first loss for the Valkyrie, and it was a loss to humanity. On the Eclipse, Reed allowed himself a small smile. The fight was far from over, but for the first time, he felt hope. Humanity had shown the galaxy that they were not to be underestimated. The tide had turned, and Earth's warship was proving that the Vorkari's reign of terror was over. The battle between the Eclipse and the Vorkari fleet had reached a critical point. The alien ships, once full of confidence, were now scattered across space, their once mighty formations broken. Captain Elias Reed watched the chaos unfold on the ship's monitors, his mind racing with calculations. The Eclipse had taken down several of the alien ships, but Zorath was not one to give up easily. He would not admit defeat. "Captain, the alien fleet is pulling back," reported Lieutenant Harper, one of the crew members. She watched her own screen, her face filled with concern. "They're regrouping, trying to form a new defense." Reed nodded. "They're not giving up yet. They'll come at us harder, but we'll be ready." The Eclipse was designed to withstand immense pressure, and its weapons were formidable, but Reed knew that a direct attack from the Vorkari could still destroy them if they weren't careful. He studied the enemy fleet. Despite the damage they had taken, they were not fully broken. Zorath's flagship still had some fight left in it, and the remaining alien ships were regrouping, coordinating their next move. "They're trying to create a defensive perimeter around the flagship," Reed observed. "If we don't act quickly, they'll be able to repair their ships." "We can't give them the chance," Lieutenant Harper replied firmly. "We have to keep the pressure on them." Reed took a deep breath, his mind working through every possible strategy. This was the turning point, the moment that would determine the outcome of the battle. If the Eclipse could disable the flagship, the Vorkari fleet would collapse. But that wouldn't be easy. "Prepare for another strike," Reed ordered. "We hit them hard and fast. Target the flagship's core." The crew moved into action, the hum of the Eclipse's systems filling the bridge as they prepared to unleash another devastating barrage. The alien fleet had underestimated humanity, but now, Reed and his team would make them understand the true power of Earth's warship. On the Vorkari flagship, Admiral Zorath seethed with frustration. His fleet was in disarray, and his flagship had taken significant damage. Yet he refused to surrender. He was the leader of the Vorkari. He would not let one human ship bring them to their knees. "Regroup," Zorath barked. "Form a defensive shield around the flagship. We cannot allow them to strike again." The alien fleet began to move into position, trying to shield the flagship from the Eclipse's weapons. Zorath could feel the tension building. His ships were on the edge of defeat, but he knew that if he could hold on just a little longer, he might be able to turn the tide. His fleet had the strength to fight back. They just needed the right moment. But that moment was slipping away. Reed's voice broke through the tension on the Eclipse's bridge. "Fire everything we've got." With a thunderous roar, the Eclipse unleashed its most powerful attack yet. The energy blast streaked through space, targeting the alien flagship. The shot hit its mark, and for a moment, everything went silent. Then, an explosion so massive that it lit up the darkness of space erupted from the flagship. The shockwave rippled across the battlefield, sending alien ships tumbling through space. Admiral Zorath could only watch in horror as his flagship crumbled under the force of the Eclipse's attack. His greatest weapon, his pride, was destroyed. "Retreat," Zorath shouted, his voice filled with panic. "All ships, retreat." But it was too late. The Vorkari fleet was broken, their flagship destroyed, and their morale shattered. The battle for Earth was over, and humanity had won. Captain Reed allowed himself a brief moment of satisfaction. The tide had turned, but the war was not yet over. He knew that this was only the beginning of Earth's rise to power in the galaxy. But today they had made history. Today they had defeated the Vorkari. The battle had shifted. Earth's warship, the Eclipse, had taken down the alien flagship, and the remnants of the Vorkari fleet scattered in panic. Their once proud ships were now reduced to smoldering debris, and Admiral Zorath's forces were no longer the threat they had seemed. Yet, despite the victory, Captain Elias Reed knew that the battle wasn't truly over. The Eclipse was powerful, but the Vorkari were dangerous, and Zorath was still out there. "Captain," Lieutenant Harper spoke urgently, her voice filled with a mix of relief and concern. The alien fleet is disorganized, but they're not giving up. Some of their remaining ships are trying to regroup. They're planning one last offensive. Reed stood up, his gaze sharp as he stared at the tactical map on the screen. The Vorkari were retreating, yes, but they hadn't surrendered. A final desperate attempt to break Earth's warship was still coming. "Status on our energy levels?" Reed asked. "We're low, Captain," Lieutenant Collins responded. "The Eclipse can only sustain 2 more full-scale attacks. After that, we'll need time to recharge." Reed nodded grimly. The next few minutes would determine everything. If they didn't neutralize the remaining Vorkari forces now, they would have to fight off a far stronger force when the Eclipse was vulnerable. It was a risk he couldn't take. "We can't wait for them to regroup," Reed said, his voice steady. "Prepare for the final strike. We'll hit them before they get the chance." The crew responded immediately, their movements swift and focused. They had trained for this. They knew that Earth's survival depended on the success of this attack. Meanwhile, on the flagship's broken bridge, Admiral Zoreth seethed with fury. His flagship was gone, reduced to space debris. His forces were scattered, and the Eclipse had proved itself to be a devastating force. But Zoreth was not a leader who would accept defeat. He would fight to the bitter end. The Vorkari had conquered countless worlds, and he refused to let Earth be the one to break their streak. "Regroup," Zoreth barked. "I won't let them destroy us. We're Vorkari. We will fight." The remaining Vorkari ships maneuvered as best they could, forming a defensive line around Zoreth's command ship, which was the last of the Vorkari's powerful vessels still intact. The ships were battered, their weapons barely functional, but they would not give in. Back on the Eclipse, Reed could see the enemy ships trying to form a defensive perimeter. The Vorkari were desperate, but they still posed a significant threat. Reed wasn't about to let them regroup. "Fire everything we've got," Reed commanded. "Let's finish this." The Eclipse's weapons powered up for the final attack. The ship trembled as its massive cannons discharged one after another, launching powerful beams of energy toward the Vorkari ships. The enemy defensive line began to break apart. One by one, the alien ships disintegrated under the relentless fire. The remaining Vorkari forces were no match for the overwhelming power of the Eclipse. As the final blast hit Zoreth's command ship, it erupted in a massive explosion, leaving only debris floating in the void. For a moment, there was silence. Reed stood at the helm, watching the screen. His heart raced with the intensity of the moment, but his mind was already calculating what came next. The battle was won, but the war was far from over. "Admiral Zoreth's ship is destroyed," Lieutenant Harper reported. "The Vorkari fleet has been scattered." "We've done it, Captain." Reed exhaled deeply. He hadn't allowed himself to feel relief yet, but now he could. The Vorkari had been defeated, and Earth had won. "We've made our mark on the galaxy," Reed said quietly, "but this is only the beginning." Earth had proven itself. The Vorkari had underestimated humanity's resilience, and now the galaxy would know that Earth was not a planet to be ignored. The Eclipse had not only saved Earth, it had made humanity a force to be reckoned with. But Captain Reed knew there would be more challenges ahead. The battle for Earth had ended, but humanity's place in the galaxy had just begun. The Vorkari fleet had been shattered. Earth's warship, the Eclipse, had proven itself a force like no other, and the enemy, once confident in their victory, now faced the reality of their defeat. The galaxy, it seemed, had just witnessed a turning point. Yet Captain Elias Reed knew that no victory was ever truly complete without ensuring the threat was fully extinguished. Though the bulk of the Vorkari fleet was either destroyed or in retreat, there was still one last piece to the puzzle: Admiral Zoreth himself. "We've taken out the majority of the fleet, but Zoreth is still out there," Lieutenant Harper reported, her eyes fixed on the screen. "He's regrouping with the last of his warships. His flagship may be destroyed, but he's not finished yet." Reed knew that Zoreth, as ruthless and prideful as he was, wouldn't stop until he had drawn his last breath. The Vorkari leader was still dangerous, and the Eclipse could not afford to let him escape. "Set a course to intercept," Reed ordered firmly. "We end this now." The crew moved swiftly. Despite the heavy damage the Eclipse had sustained in the earlier clashes, Reed was determined to finish what they had started. The warship's systems hummed with energy as it turned toward Zoreth's last remaining ships, which were already in motion, trying to find a way to regroup. Outside the ship, the stars glittered in the vast emptiness of space, almost eerily quiet after the chaos of the battle. In the distance, Reed could make out the outline of Zoreth's final ship, a monstrous vessel still determined to escape Earth's wrath. As the Eclipse closed in, Reed stood tall, his eyes fixed on the screen. His heart pounded with anticipation, but his mind remained clear. This was the moment he had been waiting for, the moment to finish the fight. Zoreth's ship had seen them coming, and it turned to face the Eclipse. A final clash was inevitable. "Prepare for a full-scale assault," Reed commanded, his voice steady but firm. "Target their engine core and weapon systems." The crew didn't hesitate. They'd faced everything Zoreth's fleet could throw at them, and now they would face him. With a coordinated effort, the Eclipse's weapons charged once more, ready to unleash the full power of Earth's technological might. Zoreth's ship fired first, launching a barrage of missiles toward the Eclipse. The Vorkari ship's weapons had taken heavy damage, but they still had enough power for one final strike. The missiles sped through space, streaking toward the Eclipse like deadly comets. But Reed had anticipated this. With a sharp command, the Eclipse swerved to the side, narrowly avoiding the incoming attack. The missiles missed their target, and before Zoreth could fire again, the Eclipse responded. Energy beams erupted from the Eclipse's cannons, cutting through space with deadly precision. The first shot hit Zoreth's ship's shield, weakening it. The second shot targeted its weapon systems, and the third shattered the enemy's engine core. Zoreth's ship was now crippled, its weapons useless, and its engines sputtering. For a moment, there was silence. "Direct hit," Lieutenant Harper reported, her voice filled with disbelief. "Admiral Zoreth's ship is losing power. They're disabled." Reed took a deep breath, his fingers hovering over the controls. He had to ensure Zoreth didn't escape, but there was something else on his mind. He didn't want to destroy the enemy completely. Not yet. The Vorkari leader's surrender would mark the end of this war. Humanity's survival depended on it. "Send a message to Zoreth," Reed ordered. "Tell him to surrender. This is over." On the screen, a transmission appeared. Zoreth's image, his green face filled with anger, yet tinged with something else. "Fear. You think you've won, human." Zoreth sneered. "This is just one battle. The Vorkari will rise again." Reed's voice was calm, unwavering. "This war is over. Admiral, surrender now or face complete destruction. Your choice." Zoreth's face twisted in fury, but he said nothing. For a moment, it seemed as though he might continue to fight, but then his ship shuddered, and its engines flickered out. It was over. The battle had ended. The war was won. Reed exhaled slowly, his eyes softening for the first time in hours. The Eclipse had carried Earth through the storm, and humanity had proved itself capable of standing tall against even the most powerful forces in the galaxy. The Vorkari had been defeated, and Earth had emerged victorious. The galaxy would never forget this day. The Eclipse hovered silently in the vast emptiness of space, its massive shape casting a long shadow over the wreckage of the once proud Vorkari fleet. The battle was over, but the tension in the air was palpable. Captain Elias Reed stood at the helm, his eyes fixed on the screen showing Admiral Zoreth's crippled ship, still floating in space, surrounded by the remains of the alien forces. Reed knew that the next step was crucial. Despite the victory, there was still one piece left to the puzzle: the alien commander himself. Zoreth's pride had already been shattered, and Earth's warship had proven itself more than a match for the Vorkari. Now, the time had come for the final chapter of this war. "Captain," Lieutenant Harper called, her voice steady but tinged with concern. "Zoreth's ship is fully disabled. He's trying to send a distress signal, but our systems are blocking it." Reed nodded. "Good. We can't let him contact reinforcements. This ends now." The crew of the Eclipse moved quickly, maintaining the ship's defensive posture, while Reed composed himself. His mission had been clear from the beginning: to protect Earth, to stop the Vorkari, and to make sure that this attack would be the last they would ever face. Now, Earth had proven itself. But the galaxy had to know that humanity was not a species to be underestimated. "Open a channel," Reed ordered, his voice steady. He knew this was the moment to send a message to Zoreth. The communication screen flickered and then stabilized. Zoreth's face appeared, his expression furious and defiant despite the defeat. His green skin seemed to shimmer under the lights of his damaged ship, his sharp eyes burning with hatred. "You think you've won, human." Zoreth spat, his voice laced with venom. "This isn't the end. The Vorkari will rise again. We have allies. You cannot defeat us all." Reed took a deep breath, his hands resting on the console. "The war is over, Admiral. Your fleet is shattered, and your flagship is gone. You have no forces left. Surrender now, and you may live to see another day." Zoreth's eyes narrowed, and for a moment, Reed saw something flicker in the alien's gaze, perhaps the first signs of doubt. But Zoreth wasn't ready to accept defeat. "You're wrong. The Vorkari will never bow to you, human. We will rise again, and you will be nothing but a footnote in our history." Reed didn't flinch. "The only thing that will rise today is the new balance of power in this galaxy. Surrender, and you will stand before Earth's leaders to answer for your actions. Continue to resist, and I'll make sure you and your people never threaten anyone again." The silence between them was thick, but Reed's words hung in the air, undeniable and final. Zoreth seemed to consider his options. His once unshakable confidence was gone, replaced by the bitter reality of the situation. He had lost. The war was over, and Earth had emerged victorious. After what felt like an eternity, Zoreth finally spoke, his voice barely a whisper, laced with anger and grudging respect. "I surrender." Reed allowed himself a brief nod, a sense of satisfaction running through him. The battle had been long, and the cost had been high, but Earth had proven that it was not a world to be conquered. Humanity had faced the might of the Vorkari and had won. They had stood their ground and shown the galaxy that even in the face of overwhelming odds, humans would never give up. "Prepare a containment ship to bring Zoreth aboard," Reed instructed. "Make sure he's treated as a prisoner of war, but let him know Earth has no intention of starting another conflict." As the Eclipse slowly turned to face the remains of the Vorkari fleet, Reed looked out at the stars. Earth was no longer just a small, insignificant planet in the far corner of the galaxy. It had taken its place as a force to be reckoned with, and humanity had shown the universe what it meant to fight for survival. The future was uncertain, but one thing was clear: Earth was no longer afraid. The war was over. The galaxy had just witnessed humanity's rise, and Captain Elias Reed knew that Earth had earned its place in the stars. The Vorkari fleet was gone. Their leader, Admiral Zoreth, had surrendered. The battle for Earth had ended, but the aftermath was only beginning. Captain Elias Reed stood on the bridge of the Eclipse, watching the stars outside as his crew moved about, securing the ship and preparing for the next steps. The alien threat had been crushed, but Reed knew that this moment wasn't just a victory. It was a turning point for humanity. The Eclipse had proven itself, but the galaxy was vast, and there would be other challenges ahead. Humanity had just made its mark, but Reed understood that the real work had just begun. The Vorkari were a powerful force, but their surrender opened the door to new possibilities, possibilities that Earth had never considered before. "Captain, we're ready to bring Zorath aboard," Lieutenant Harper reported. "He's in custody, as ordered." Reed nodded, but his mind was already focused on the bigger picture. The war had ended, but the future of Earth was uncertain. The galaxy had seen humanity's strength, but they had also seen the Vorkari's resilience. The real question now was, what would happen next? "Bring him to the conference room," Reed said. "It's time we start negotiating peace." Moments later, Admiral Zorath was escorted into the conference room aboard the Eclipse. His green skin still bore the marks of battle, but his posture was proud, despite the circumstances. The once feared leader of the Vorkari now stood before Reed, his eyes filled with a mixture of anger and reluctant respect. "You've beaten me, human," Zorath said, his voice low and edged with bitterness. "But this is not the end. The Vorkari are not finished. We will rise again." Reed met his gaze, unwavering. "The Vorkari have no power left. Your fleet is gone. This war is over." Zorath's expression darkened. "You think this is the end? You think the galaxy will bow to you just because you defeated one fleet? You're nothing more than a speck in the grand scheme of things." Reed's voice was calm, but firm. "We're not just a speck. Earth has proven its strength, and now the galaxy will know it. You will stand before the leaders of Earth, and you will answer for the damage you've caused." For a moment, there was silence. Zorath glared at Reed, his pride wounded. But in that silence, something else passed between them. A quiet understanding. Zorath had no choice now but to follow Earth's terms. His arrogance had been shattered, and he knew it. "I will cooperate," Zorath finally said, his voice filled with a quiet resignation. "But you are making a mistake. The Vorkari will find a way to rebuild. You cannot keep us down forever." Reed nodded. "Maybe, but we will be ready for whatever comes next. The galaxy is changing, Zorath, and so is Earth." As Zorath was escorted away, Reed couldn't help but feel a sense of both relief and uncertainty. The war was over, but Earth's place in the galaxy was just beginning. Humanity had shown its strength, but the future was a vast unknown. The next few days were filled with tense negotiations. The leaders of Earth, united for the first time, began working together to decide what to do with the defeated Vorkari and how to rebuild a fragile peace. The Eclipse and its crew had done the impossible, but now, Earth had to navigate the delicate balance between power and diplomacy. Reed stood in front of a large window, gazing out at the stars. The universe was vast, filled with mysteries and dangers. Earth had proven it could hold its own, but Reed knew that this victory wasn't the end. It was only the beginning. And as Earth's leaders worked to forge a new future, Reed couldn't help but think about what was yet to come. The galaxy had watched as Earth had fought and won. Now, the universe would see what humanity could do with its newfound strength. The Eclipse was ready. Earth was ready. The stars were waiting. The battle had been won, but Captain Elias Reed knew that the true test of humanity's strength had just begun. The Eclipse had proven itself, but Earth's victory over the Vorkari was just the beginning of a new chapter in the galaxy. The alien fleet was shattered. Their leader, Admiral Zorath, was captured, and Earth had taken its place as a powerful force. But now, humanity had to navigate a galaxy that was suddenly aware of its potential. Reed stood at the command center of the Eclipse, watching as Earth's leaders prepared for the next steps. The war was over, but the peace that would follow would not be easy. The Vorkari may have been defeated, but their allies still lurked in the shadows, and new threats could rise from the far reaches of space. Earth had to be ready for whatever came next. "Captain, the delegation from Earth's leaders is ready," Lieutenant Harper said, breaking Reed's thoughts. "They're expecting your report on the Vorkari surrender." Reed nodded. "Send them in." As the leaders entered the command center, Reed couldn't help but feel a sense of pride mixed with uncertainty. The war was over, but what came next would determine Earth's place in the galaxy. The planet's leaders, now united for the first time, had to decide how to handle the Valkyrie and what role Earth would play in the future of the universe. The head of Earth's government, President Amelia Hayes, stepped forward. "Captain Reed," she said, her voice filled with authority, "we owe you and your crew everything. You've saved Earth from destruction. But now we have to think about the future." Reed met her gaze, his face serious. "The Valkyrie may be defeated, but there are other dangers out there. Earth needs to be prepared. We can't afford to let our guard down." Hayes nodded, her expression thoughtful. "You're right. We've been living in isolation for so long, thinking we were safe. But the galaxy is much bigger than we ever imagined. We have to decide what kind of place we want to have in it." Reed understood what she meant. Earth had spent centuries developing its technology, isolated from the rest of the galaxy. But now, humanity had proven that it could stand up to the galaxy's most powerful species. It had earned the respect of the universe, but the question was, what would it do with that power? "I've been thinking about that," Reed said, his voice calm but resolute. "Earth has proven it's capable of fighting, of standing up for itself. But we need to build alliances. We need to reach out to other civilizations, make connections, and ensure that humanity doesn't have to face these threats alone in the future." President Hayes took a deep breath, clearly weighing his words. "You're right, Captain. Earth has always been alone. But no more. We need to show the galaxy that humanity isn't just about survival. It's about cooperation, innovation, and strength." The conversation turned to plans for the future. Earth's leaders agreed to send ambassadors to the stars, to open diplomatic channels with other species, and to build a galactic coalition that would ensure peace and stability for all. The Valkyrie would be held accountable for their actions, but humanity would show the galaxy that it wasn't just a planet of warriors. It was a planet of thinkers, dreamers, and builders. As the meeting ended, Reed stood at the window of the eclipse once more, looking out at the stars. The future was uncertain, but humanity had already proven that it could face the unknown. The Valkyrie had underestimated Earth, and the galaxy had learned a valuable lesson. Humanity was not to be ignored. The eclipse was ready for whatever came next, and so was Earth. The battle had been won, but the true adventure was just beginning. With alliances to form and a future to build, humanity's place in the stars was no longer a question. It was a fact. Captain Reed smiled to himself. Earth had shown its strength. Now it was time to show the universe what it truly meant to be human.